Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you.
Well, hello. Let's talk about bathrooms, break rooms, and common areas. Oh my. Sorry, I had to say it. I love that title, Camille. That was genius. So we wanted to come and talk a little bit about, in this pandemic mode, when everyone's returning to work, maybe you were always open, or maybe you're just returning to work. What do you do in these areas where employees naturally congregate? You know, Camille, you were mentioning about the coffee pot at your office, right? How do you tell everyone stay in line and 6 feet apart as we approach the coffee pot when everyone's going, I need my coffee? So, what do you think about that?
Well, we're actually having conversations about not even having coffee at the moment. The rates of COVID are going up this week. And the coffee maker and the coffee pot to get the coffee is a high touch point. And how do we keep it clean? And we just can't, quite honestly, figure out the answer to that. And so right now, we're actually considering not having coffee and asking people to bring their own, simply because it's a high touch point that we're not sure that we can keep clean and have control over. And so I think that's something that a lot of employers are facing right now.
Yeah, but then there'll be like a revolution of no coffee and a lot of cranky, uncaffeinated people. But I think that's a really good point, because I remember early on reading when New York was going through the worst of it, just across the state, when some of the essential, workers were still working, they just closed off those break rooms. They didn't even try to figure that out, because it was just too. But now I think we are sort of in a shifted phase where people are trying to figure it out. Unfortunately, while the numbers go up, everyone, there's a bit of just, maybe we're just not going to deal with that right now. And I kind of think you're right, Camille, like when you're looking at it, like there are things that have to be used. Like maybe it's the copy room, or the copy, and you're going to have to figure out a way or to develop a potential system. I call it like the McDonald's system, where you go into McDonald's or in another fast food restaurant and you can show that something's been cleaned, right? Like, so how do you, show that, a company is trying to maintain that level of cleanliness? And, in the copy, dealing with something like a copy where people are touching it and it's the only way to make the machine work, can you have some system where people are recording it?
Well, you're keeping materials next to it, right? To clean it, making sure everyone's cleaning it beforehand and cleaning it after. But, what about when there's multiple people? How do you, I'm thinking about my office, okay? If the copier, we've got 2 copiers, but the primary copier is in the middle of the office. Now, many of us still aren't returned to work yet, but those that are, when I have come into the office, I go around a corner to go to the copier and there's someone there. I don't know that there was someone there because I just came around that corner and I have to back up and walk away. And so it's thinking about the paths that employees are taking. How do you, like the bathroom, if you have a multi-stall bathroom, but you have a door before you walk into the bathroom, how do you know how many people are in the bathroom before you go in there? So, and if it's not your building, if you're renting, if you're renting, then maybe they've said certain stalls shouldn't be used so that people can distance. But if it is your bathroom, you need to think about that, right? How many people can be in the bathroom? How are you, we have to think about things now we've never had to really think about before, in terms of where employees might accidentally come together.
Well, and I think, a lot of offices are requiring masks if you're out of the common area or away from your desk. So, if you're at your desk that's properly social distance, it's okay to take the mask off. But as soon as you leave your desk, you have your mask on. So that issue is taken care of. But then you still have all these touch points, especially, I hate to say it, and I know the bathroom is Trisha's favorite subject, but there's all kinds of touch points in the bathroom, because you're entering the door, you're closing the stall, you have to flush, you have to get the toilet paper, you got to wash your hands, got to get the paper towel, and you got to leave. I mean, that is a ton of touch points that's got, you need to make sure are kept clean if it's your own bathroom. And you should be checking with building management if it's not your bathroom to make sure that they have people that are trained to clean, for these COVID germs and get rid of them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when you're debating how do we keep the copier clean and the bathroom clean and the coffee pot clean, maybe the coffee pot kind of falls off on the priority list, right? Of maybe it's just not worth worrying about that when we have all these other touch point areas that are necessary for the work. But what about lunches? Like if the restaurants are closed or they're limited, you know what I mean? And, or individuals maybe don't feel comfortable going in a restaurant, and they don't have the break room. Are they eating at their desk? And if they're eating at their desk, then they can't really wear a mask. And so how do you kind of work through those issues, right?
Well, in an office setting, if they're eating at their desk, how do we make sure they're not also checking their email or working, right? So if we've got a non-exempt employee that cannot work during their break, right? Any interruption, any work questions, anything could be on the job and not their break time, and I was working time. How do you make sure if you're eating at your desk that they're not doing that? And then how do you prevent them from later coming back? Because, an employee can come back a month from now and go, oh, I was checking my email while I was at lunch and I didn't realize, and I should have been paid overtime. And, that I've seen that happen where you employees realize later, or maybe for whatever reason, suddenly brought up this claim that we're now dealing with. So if you can't go to the break room and completely separate away, and maybe even the building cafeteria is closed, and like you said, the restaurants are closed, so where do you go? You're going to go eat in your car, right? How do you make sure employees aren't working?
I mean, you can have them log off their computer and not allow computer use during lunch, and if you want to allow internet use, maybe they put up a sign on their desk that says at lunch so that people know not to interrupt them with a work question while the sign is up.
I like that.
Yeah. And it goes back to communicating, right? So the managers need to make sure that everybody understands,
right?
When they're at lunch, they're at lunch. You cannot even stop by their desk and go, hey, could you, normally they'd be in the break room. You would have left them alone. There's no difference. You have to leave them alone, even though they're at their desk, right? Yep. But if we're dealing with, a warehouse floor, and you've got larger groups than we're talking about in an office setting that can just go to their desk, and where do they go? So I know some businesses have opened up areas that were, never available for employees to eat lunch in before. Maybe they have a training room. Maybe there's a large sized, conference room that is always in the office and really, office staff used, but the shop guys never used, or girls or women, sorry, never used. But now suddenly they might open it up to them so that there's more spaces that people, you have to be creative about where could people go eat, and then stagger shifts, right? Stagger these breaks. So instead of having 1 or 2 meal break times, maybe you're having 4. To make sure that people are able to stay apart.
Right. And what do you guys think about, I know I've seen like in some of the grocery stores here, at least, they actually have marked on the floor the direction of traffic that you're supposed to go in. So
right. Yeah.
And you go straight and you have to maneuver around the store in a specific order. And I hate to say it, but most of the employees, at least where I have shopped, are very good about directing you about how they want you to travel for the safety of everyone. And I'm wondering if people are going to be doing that in office spaces where hallways maybe aren't wide enough for people to pass and properly social distance in the common areas. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I mean, even with masks on, you should still be distancing, right? You're not supposed to be able to, I mean, you might come in close contact with a mask, but you're still not recommended that you congregate closely together with masks on, because they're not perfect. So that's interesting. I mean, I saw it in an elevator. I was just in an elevator last week, And I've seen it a lot where there's limits on the number of people that can go into an elevator. But when you went into the elevator, you had a space. There were 4 people allowed in the elevator. There were 4 spaces with an arrow, and that was the direction that you're supposed to face. So everybody was not looking at each other. So it wasn't just 4 people in the elevator. It was stand on this spot and face this way or face this way. I'd never seen that before, I'm
not sure that does anything, frankly.
I don't know that it does anything either, but someone's trying. Someone's trying to be creative, right?
I mean, the CDC's like prolonged exposure is that first of all, most elevators don't even have the 6 feet that you need to have anyway. And then on top of that, you're not hopefully on the elevator 15 minutes, but I mean, some of this stuff is just going to get real wild. I mean, with the bathrooms, are we going to need to go back to middle school where you have to have a bathroom hall pass because you don't know how many people are in the bathroom? And so, I mean, I could just see it's going to escalate. I'm always curious to see the creative ways. I think I've seen that too, Sue. And I think some of that is these huge, big corporate buildings know that there's some exposure. They don't know what it is. So they've just gotten real creative in how they can show they're really making attempts to sort of, limit the exposure of individuals. But I mean, if you really want to limit the exposure of individuals, it would be like 1 person on the elevator, right? And how efficient is that going to be in big cities like the ones we live in to go up and down and get people to work? So, it's kind of a
line out the door. It'd be like hour-long line just to get to your office. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm still picturing Sue with her nose in the corner of the elevator, like I just can't get over it.
I was so confused at first. I couldn't figure out what was happening, and then I'm like, am I the right way? It was fun. You would have laughed. You would have enjoyed it.
Did you get scolded by someone that said you weren't standing the right way?
No. I figured it out pretty quickly when everyone got in the elevator and suddenly shifted direction.
They all knew it, and you didn't know.
So it was interesting, but yeah, I mean, people are getting really creative. I think it comes down to too, when you, like Camille, when you talk about in California, how it's presumed if you get it at work, you're presumed to have, or if you get COVID, you're presumed to have gotten it at work, right? And there was that went into effect in Illinois, and then they pulled back. There was, I believe there was a lawsuit filed against it, and they backed off of it. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to have this kind of strict liability, almost, I mean, I'm not calling it strict liability, but it is, right? In essence, almost a strict liability concept, because there's a presumption that you have to overcome. I can see why people are going really far to try to show, to try to keep people healthy or try to show how far they've gone to keep people safe.
Well, I think there's so many unknowns about what's going to happen with respect to the liability and the risk management here, that, people are trying to do as much as they can with what they have, essentially, because they don't want to get caught in the middle of a lawsuit and be that business that's made an example of, ultimately, I think.
Okay, Camille. So if employers weren't leaving California, now they're leaving California. And poor Illinois, trying to be like California, but can't fully commit.
We're really trying. We're trying so hard to be California, but yeah.
They need to fully commit, Susan.
Well, our businesses flee over to the Wisconsin border. That's where I'm licensed in Illinois and Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, Wisconsin, it's not that far. I get it. What is it? So, I mean, yeah. I mean,
it's interesting. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see where this all shakes out, right, in the end. And I mean, I'd love to see some sort of safe harbor provisions coming in to protect employers, because they're doing everything they can. But when you're talking about, like Camille, when you talk about, you're supposed to wear your mask in the office. Yes, you are. But if you're able to stay 6 feet away, at least in Illinois, if you can stay 6 feet away, you don't have to wear the mask in the office. So if I think I'm the only one there and I'm walking around and suddenly I'm not,
Well, and let me be clear, that's not a mandate, but a lot of
I understand.
Are saying if you are at your desk, you don't have to wear your mask because you're 6 feet apart, for example. But if you get up and you're going to walk in the common areas, or you're going to go to the bathroom, or you're going to go to use the microwave,
right,
in the break room, you should have your mask on, because we don't know who you're going to come into contact with.
Exactly.
To protect ourselves and to protect the employees, business owners are asking people to wear a mask when they're not at their desk. And I think that that's, quite frankly, a smart move.
I agree. No, I completely agree. I'm just saying, sometimes people, I think they're the only ones there, right? But you're right. But if you don't know, and you might not know, bring your mask, put your mask on. We've gotten so used to wearing masks in such a short period of time. At least I have. I don't know.
Have you guys seen the graduation? It's like it was a high school graduation, and they were handing the diploma with like a long plastic hand.
Oh,
with
no.
like a thing on the end.
No.
Like something you would get at a football game, right? Like the styrofoam one, but like it was an actual long plastic. And that's how they handed it to it was like a drive-in movie theater, and they gave the graduates that. I was like, oh, you could do that at work, where you had some sort of like long device. I mean,
right.
Think about it. It's some sort of way to sort of, because how are they giving paper to other paper? If you have an inbox and an outbox, and that is routine, that you're either the person that empties the inbox or empties the outbox, or you're the person that puts stuff in other people's inboxes. Like, how do you get out of that routine? Is our employers actually going down to that low level, or are they kind of just going, it's less than 15 minutes, they've got a mask on, if they become, close to the individual with that, or do they move all the inbox and outboxes to somewhere else? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that could be a potential solution to all of that. Close the break room, move the outboxes somewhere else, give everyone a bathroom pass or a hall pass to go outside, and then put markings all around the floor so you're all going in the same direction. It's no wonder that employers are frustrated as to what they're supposed to be doing here.
Right.
Right. And I don't think there's any one necessarily plan that is for every single business, because it's going to depend upon the setup of each individual business.
Right. You have to really walk around your business. What can you do? How can you do it? How to keep people safe? But it takes that, it takes that actual thought, that actual work. Actually go to your office and walk the floors, right? What can we do? Don't just tell employees to stay safe. You need to come up with some ideas.
And a lot of states, and I know we talk about this a lot, but there's guidelines on the CDCs. A lot of states have their own OSHA. I know Texas, Tricia, doesn't have a separate one, but there's recommendations. I know on Cal OSHA, on the Los Angeles Department of County Health, has resources to help businesses with all of this. And I know Texas, for example, Tricia has guidelines for a lot of the different classifications of businesses to help them out when they're looking at what safety regulations to put into their business to address the issues.
But keep in mind, it's all guidelines too, right? So we don't know, 6 months from now, some creative plaintiff side attorney is going to come out and say, we should have known, even though it wasn't a guideline, we should have known not to do this. So,
or the CDC is going to say it was 8 feet, and then we were all wrong.
Right. And that's like they said, no masks, and suddenly it's masks. And now we're hearing, well, it's because they didn't want, they needed to make sure there was enough masks for healthcare workers. Okay, fine. But in the meantime, now in California, you've got liability. You're presumed liable, but we were told we didn't have to wear masks, so you just have to do the best you can, get the information you can, keep your employees as safe as you can right now, and keep your business going.
I think you made a good point, Susan, earlier talking about, because we do, tend to talk about the office settings, because that's, you see a lot more of, because of the closeness of the offices and the individuals trying to work together, but all these other industries that are trying to figure this out, like in warehouses and even outside workers, even just because they're outside, they still have to try to figure out ways to manage it. So like when you're thinking about all the different industries, you use the different guidances that are out there through the state level, because there just really hasn't been a federal, guidance really telling them in these different industries exactly what specifically is going to be required. Instead, you're seeing these sort of different levels of recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at least in Illinois, we've got Cook County, we've got Chicago. I mean, my, businesses in Chicago, I feel sorry for them. They've got at least three different levels of different regulations going on because of Cook County, Chicago, the state. Chicago's, trying to pass more laws even now that are different than Cook County and different than the state. So it can be a challenge because you can't just look at the CDC website. You have to look at, like you said, OSHA's website, but you also might have to look at a county level website and a local level site, and it can be a real challenge.
Yeah, I think that is interesting because it's not like the warehouse workers in Chicago are in a different sort of environmental situation than the warehouse peoples here. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the end of the day, it's like it's a safety situation, a health situation, and this is sort of so interesting because usually when you're looking at like whether or not people are going to get sick and you're looking at different types of things coming in, and you look at the lawsuits that are coming out, there's very clear sort of experts that have decided this is what they feel like caused, and the causation link is there. Right now, it's just so unknown, and we're so at the beginning of this. It can be so tricky to kind of figure it out. But if employers kind of, I think, do what they can with the information that's out there, and they don't sort of ostrich in the sand, they're gonna, I think, be better off, right, than sort of just kind of going, this is too much information, which I think honestly though is very difficult, and some employers are actually feeling.
Right, because there's so much information out there now that they're trying to take in, not just on the safety guidelines, but on all the other policies and procedures that they need to adapt to.
But really focusing on those government websites, not just what did you see on your evening news that night, right? I mean, but you're right, they're getting hit in every direction, but let's be sure we're relying on the right sites for information, even though they conflict. You want to focus. What do you
don't like my 6-foot plastic hand idea? That's not.
I love it. I'm gonna get one of those. Those.
You're gonna have it on the next
grabber.
podcast?
What are those grabber things called? That people who can't bend over use to pick up. We're gonna get those all over the office. It's gonna be fabulous.
Be creative. That's the point of this podcast.
Yeah. Well, good. We are creative. Look at us. This has been a fun discussion about different ideas and how we can keep those bathrooms, break rooms, and common areas. Oh my. Keep everybody safe. So thanks for joining us again, and we will see you next time.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.